just really wanted to do a walkthrough of the personal injury attorney presentation that you had. Um, and really, the purpose of this is so many of the doctors that I talk to, and I remember myself. You can be a little intimidated if you're not used to dealing with attorneys, and a lot of times we project upon the attorneys that they know way more than what they really do. So that's one of the reasons is just to show that, yeah, you can talk to the attorney and get their business and not be the underling, actually be in control, and which we should be. Um, so that's one of the reasons. Also to actually kind of expose what the attorney did or didn't know, and then the other thing is that if you don't hit the motivation of your target market and what any marketing you do, whether it's personal injury attorney marketing or whatever, it's not going to be effective. So we'll kind of explore those factors as we go through this. So let's go ahead and get started here. And again, I'm talking with Dr. Chris McNeil, chiropractor in Detroit. He has 3 chiropractic offices that he's managing and putting systems in place and things of that nature. And so, Chris, when we first started, what would you say your knowledge on personal injury was on a scale of 1 to 10?
On personal injury marketing or just PI in general?
Both.
I mean, I wasn't really doing a whole lot of marketing, just trying to give away free tickets, to whoever, sporting tickets and whatnot.
Okay.
And I had a pretty good grasp on the procedures, the majority of the procedures and protocols for PI. I definitely added some more working with you, though.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get.
Pretty good with PI, but marketing, no, not good at all.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. And remember, let me just give a brief outline. Remember when we're talking about marketing and the marketing formula, and we'll kind of pay attention to this as we go through. Remember, with a target market, we're always going to pay attention to the demographic profile. What is the sweet spot of the demographics, the psychographics, the geographics, the psychographic barriers, the gateways we use to gain entry, the vehicle of delivery. And then remember, the formula deals with publicity, advertising, and sales with follow-up. And then we're also differentiating what's the difference between a primary need being overwhelmingly over 80% the loss of money for personal injury attorneys. That's the highest motivation, to making money, which is the second motivation, and it's way lower than losing money, and then saving time. And then there's the service factors, the primary and secondary service factors, and those specifically being locations, willing to negotiate. Do you have a medical team to support the injury drivers as well as transportation? Those being the primary service factors. And then the secondary service factors being getting the notes out on time. Do you return calls? Do you charge for your reports? Well, will you get the notes there within a less than 3-week time period? Will you let the attorney know if the person misses? So those are reasons that you'll get business, but those are secondary service factors, are reasons essentially why you'll lose business if you don't do those things. So having said that, let's kind of do a walkthrough. Let's go ahead and just do a walkthrough, and just go ahead and start, Chris, with where was this attorney and how'd you find out about
him? So when I put together my list, I'm going for my warm market first. So this attorney I was familiar with. I have a patient that uses his services, and we recently had a deposition. So I kind of was planting seeds there, and then I sent him out my press release. Not to reach our doctor's documentation and deposition supports patient's $86,000 claim settlement.
Okay, before you go that far down the road, let's identify if this exactly was this an introduction, an active passive referral, a cold call, or lead. So it was definitely somebody you worked with before. How many times had you worked with him before?
Once, just the one client.
And how far back?
So
And how far back would you say you worked with that client?
about a year. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay.
So
So you didn't.
he's relatively newer.
Okay. So you didn't. It's not definitely a cold call. You knew him to some degree, but in no way did you have a relationship with this attorney.
Not yet.
Okay. So you worked with him once before, and so he is how he got on your list. Okay. So we're identifying the four factors of trust, referral, cold call, or lead. So I would say he was not. I wouldn't. I mean that I wouldn't call it an introduction. I would definitely wouldn't call it a cold call, and I wouldn't call it a lead. It's kind of between a lead and a referral, so to speak, probably.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, so that's how he gets on your target market. So remember, we have a target market for our list. So that's how he gets on your list. Now, when he gets on your list, what's the first thing you do?
I found the press release.
Okay, so we created the press release, and you sent them the press release.
I sent them the press release. Yep.
Okay, and then what
And
happened?
I had a deposition coming up with him, so I was kind of chatting with him, and I made sure he got the press release, and asked him what he thought about that information, and he was interested,
Okay.
and then I got him on, and then I sent him the link for the autoresponder, so then he started getting videos.
Okay. When so you saw him because you were working on another case, or you phoned him? You saw him in person, or what?
We phoned each other because we were getting ready for this deposition, sending paperwork back and forth. So I talked to him on the phone a couple times, and he's a really nice guy. I thought, hey, I wanna put him in the system here and try to get some more business from him.
Okay. So you talked to him on the phone, and then was it on the phone when you talked to him and asked him about the press release?
Actually, by that time, he had come for the deposition. So when we were done with the deposition, we were talking about that and talking about the press release.
Okay, so that was in person. When you asked him about the press release, what did you say?
I just said, "What did you think about that press release I sent you?"
Okay.
Pretty much.
What did he say?
And he said, it's just really good information. He said he looked forward to meeting and hearing more information.
Okay, good. And so that was kind of the end of the first contact for.
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't go into much. Now, did you tell him that you would send him the link to the marketing, or how did that start? The autoresponder.
Yeah, I did. So after the deposition, we were talking about the press release, and I was kind of dropping some little tidbits on him, and I told him, yeah, let's set up a lunch, and I can go over some more information on how to increase your personal injury claim settlements. And then I said, I'm gonna email you out a video I shot on how we get the ball rolling on doing that. And so then I sent them out the link, and he started getting the videos.
Okay.
And then
so you proactively initiated the autoresponder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because we were kind of doing a little bit of emailing about this patient anyway too, and I'm like, well, hey, check this stuff out here.
Okay.
Like
okay, so you just told him, do you mind if I send you this information, this video information? Is that how it went?
Right. And I made sure I said, make sure you click on the link and put your name and email in the subscription box, and then you'll get the videos on how to maximize personal injury claim settlement.
Okay, so you did direct him. So you did not put his name and email into autoresponder yourself and tell him. You just told him what was going to happen, and then you sent him the link for him to enter it.
That's what I did, yeah.
Okay,
I
okay.
sent them the link right to the website where the opt-in box is.
I'm just curious, is there a reason why you didn't just put his name and email in there and just get his okay?
You know what? I probably should have just done that. I at the heat of the moment, I just sent them the link.
Yeah, and of course the reason I obviously say that is the more you make somebody else do, the less likely they're going to do it. And they have things happen in their life, you know, all, just like we all do, and so they forget and they move on.
Yeah,
So it's just a little bit easier way to be proactive and not wait for them. That's all. So you send him the link. He goes ahead and fills it out. What happens next?
he got one of the videos. He watched one of the videos. And I called him back and I said, you know, did you get to watch any of those videos? And he said, yeah. And then we set up an appointment to meet.
Would it before you set that up? Was there any other discussion about what was on the videos?
Not really. Again, interesting stuff. I'd like to talk about it more.
Okay, so it was more general.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the meeting you set up, was it specifically for that information?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, I pretty much said let's get breakfast. I'll go over, you know, exactly how we can help you increase your personal injury claim compensation.
Okay, so that meeting was specifically for the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that was the key when you said, I'll share with you how we can increase your personal injury compensation. Now, when you said that, let me share with you how we can increase your personal injury compensation. What did he say?
He just kind of was going with the flow. Sounds good. You know, he's kind of a laid back guy.
Okay.
But, you know, busy guy too, lawyer. So he just kind of was going with the flow, and I'm sure he was just thinking, oh, let's see what this guy's got to show me.
Okay, good. So you captured his interest, but he's not on the edge of his seat.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So the next step is you show up to the meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens at the meeting? Oh, wait a minute. Before I ask that, Chris, do you know if he got a chance to see all the video series?
There's no way because it was just a day or two after I sent him the link, so he got to see at least the first one.
So he didn't even see the whole series. He just saw maybe one to catch his attention.
That's right.
And remember, that's how we use that. We don't use that to establish need. We use it to grab attention. That's advertising we use to grab attention so we can do the sales presentation. So that's exactly how it's supposed to work.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so you show up at the meeting, and how's it get started?
You know, we met at Dunkin' Donuts. He's very personable. We were just chatting. We got, you know, a coffee and a bagel, and sat down, and you know, I just was trying to be cordial and ask him how he was and what's new, and we were talking about the deposition. You know, I asked him, how do you think I did in the deposition? And he was impressed. So, and then we got talking a little politics. Just kind of shooting the breeze for a little bit.
Okay, and then how did you direct it to the topic?
I just said, all right, well, I know you're a busy guy. Let me just go over with you briefly on how I can help you increase your personal injury compensation.
Okay, and then what happens?
So I had a little outline because I don't have all this stuff memorized yet. So I pulled out my outline and I did the I was like, before I really go into this, I just want to answer you a couple questions. I have a couple points I want to make. So first thing I was like, well, if you don't mind me asking, I know this is a personal question, but if you don't mind me asking, how many how many new clients soft tissue injury cases do you get every month? And he was like, I don't know, anywhere from 1 to 5.
Okay, let me stop you. Let me stop you there just a second. So you used our upfront contracting statement, which lowered his defenses and stated the obvious, which was, I know it's a personal question, but if you don't mind me asking, and it's relevant to what we're talking about. So you let him know, and that's what that's called. It's a preemptive strike to lower their defenses. And on the first resistance, he told you. He didn't give you any resistance. He told you.
He did, and I had to get it out of him a little bit, though. So I was like, okay, one to 5. So would you say more closer to 5 or more closer to 1 a month? I said, would it be more like 2 or 3 a month?
I'm with you, but my point is, the first time you asked, he didn't resist. He gave you an answer, but he gave you a vague answer, 1 to 5. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
No resistance on that at all.
Okay, very good. And your active listening skills kicked in, and you saw that that was not good. You had to get a finite number.
Right. So I said, so what would you say? Two new patients, 3 as an average, and he said 2.
So you menued them. So active listening, you menued them, and you knocked them down. So in the second resistance, it gives you a finite number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And where'd you learn all that, Chris?
From Dr.
In other words, it worked, didn't it?
It worked good. I was excited about that.
Right. Okay. So let's go to the next step. So you get 2 out of them, and then what happens?
Okay. So then the next question on my little outline was, all right, now, I know this may be, again, this might be a personal question, but if you don't mind me asking, what's the average value of these cases? And I said, typically, I found that lawyers that I work with, their average cases are anywhere from, could be anywhere from 15, 20,000 up to, about 40 or 50,000. What would you say your average case value is? And then he was asking questions about, okay, well, and I said, no broken bones.
Well, Chris, before you move on, what number did he tell you?
He said 40,000.
Okay, when he said 40,000, did you believe him?
Well, but then we kind of bantered back and forth, and he said, well, it all depends on if there's a disc findings, nerve, it all depends on the findings, and I agree with them on that, because in Michigan you have to really have a disc finding. So yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
But I bet you it is on his higher side, I bet.
Okay, the only reason I point that out is, remember our ego, we will always inflate numbers, remember? And that's why I say it's good to know your regional average based on a third-party trust factor. Because it's no different than chiropractors when you say, how many patient visits you see, and the chiropractor will tell you the highest week he saw ever in his life.
Right, and now when you said 40,000, though, I was okay with that, because my bottom number was 50,000.
Okay, I'm with you. Okay, so he gives you the...
I knew 40,000 would be okay, because I was still going to show him some pain.
Right.
With my number.
Gotcha, I'm with you. Okay, so you get the number, and then what happens?
Okay, so I got those numbers. So then I was like, okay, great. Now I want to go over a couple points with you, just so we're on the same page. And I know some of this information may be a little bit boring to you, but all in all, it's very important information that you should know that will help increase your personal injury claim settlement.
Okay, so you set him up nicely with the stuff, the healthcare information that he really wouldn't know or be expected to know.
Right, and I even did that even before next thing I was going to go into how are PI cases paid. But I just wanted to clear the air with that in case I kind of stumbled along at all.
Gotcha.
So he said, yeah, fine. And so then I went over how are our PI cases paid. And, I asked them, I know you're probably familiar with how personal injury cases are paid, either through an insurance adjuster or if you need to go to trial and, have a settlement. Would you agree with that statement? Yes. So then I went into more, okay, so I just want to make sure you know or understand that, do you know that insurance companies use a computer program called Colossus to help determine the value of your claim settlement? And he was like, no, I didn't know that.
Now, Chris, when he said he didn't know Colossus, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel great because I'm like, well, man, I got this guy. I know more than he does.
Were you surprised when he said he didn't know anything about Colossus?
I was surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you
actually, I had done another meeting though, and the other guy didn't have a clue too. So I'm like, well, okay, but I was surprised with that, but I'm not going to be surprised anymore.
The reason I point that out is so often the doctors always think the attorneys know all this information. So go ahead and so you explained briefly Colossus, right?
Yeah, I just briefly explained Colossus and how the adjuster inputs information that she gets from the doctor's notes, and it can help determine the value of the case. And then I went over the 5 primary value drivers that are important ones that the adjuster is going to input into the computer program: diagnosis, impairment rating, lifetime of enjoyment, duties under duress, prognosis. So I kind of explained that a little bit, and he was impressed. He didn't know that, so I'm like, and right after I explained that, I said, if you don't work with the doctor who's properly documenting these factors, you're losing out on your cases.
Okay.
So I just kind of, because he didn't even know what Colossus was. I'm like, you're losing money already.
Yeah. Now, right. I'm with you. Now, when you identified the 4 major injuries, was he in agreement with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And obviously in Michigan, the laws are different in each state, but in Michigan, you got to have a disc finding to have a case. So I emphasize that.
Okay.
And when I actually went over the primary factors of personal injury compensation next.
Chris, before you move forward, I need to get specific because you're moving a little fast, and I want to get real specific with some of these details. Okay.
Sure.
When you said connective tissue, did he have anything to say about that?
Yeah. He had no clue what I was talking about, so I had to explain. He did, but the lawyers in Michigan, they have it stuck in their head about a disc. I had to explain to him about the alteration of motion segment integrity.
Okay.
And how it can be documented, and how we have this company we use that we send the X-rays out, and it can give up to a 25% impairment rating, which then is entered in the Colossus computer program, and that can increase your case value.
So he'd never heard of AOMSI before?
No.
Okay. So obviously he knew about the disc. How about the, of course, he would know about the nerve conduction test and nerve, right?
That's right.
And mild concussion. Was there anything else that he brought to the table with those four conditions that you weren't ready for?
No.
So at this point, he's not throwing you for a loop at all.
No. He's just absorbing what I'm saying.
It sounds to me like you're not only in control and kind of moving along, but it sounds like already there's a lot of information he doesn't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Okay, so you get through the injuries, and then what happens?
Okay, so then I say, all right, now that's the boring stuff. Oh well, okay. So I go over that, and then I'm not okay. Now here's our solution to help you maximize your PI claim settlement. So I go over the document, how we did the documentation relating to the 5 primary value drivers of Colossus, and I mentioned how we do the disability index forms, and
Well, let me ask you specifically, Chris. Did you explain to him the 3 phases of healing?
I did that next.
Okay.
I did it in a little bit different order, but I kind of went, here's how we can help increase your pay. Now that I told you all this other information that you didn't know, here is exactly how I can help you maximize your claim settlement.
Okay.
We document to the five primary value drivers. We use all these great forms to make sure that we get everything down, especially duties under duress, lifetime of enjoyment activities, prognosis and diagnosis. All right.
Now, did he know? Did he know what enjoyment of lifetime activities were?
He didn't really know what that statement meant, but then I described, okay, work, domestic activities, household, hobbies, studies, things like that.
Okay.
And then he didn't know what duties under duress was, that statement, but then I explained all about, these things that you can still do possibly, but you can't do them as much, or they're not enjoyable, or they're painful to do these activities. So I just had to explain duties under duress and lifetime enjoyment briefly.
Okay. And then after you explained it, he knew what you were talking about.
He did, yes.
Okay.
So after I talked about that, okay, so that's the first solution to help you maximize your claim settlements. Then the next one I said, so the second way we can help you is we use science-based care that's usual, customary, reasonable, based upon 3 phases of healing. So then I went over and I explained 3 phases of healing and how, basically based on the 3 phases of healing, soft tissue can lose elasticity and strength, causing that the altered motion segment integrity.
Now, let me ask you:
permanent impairment to disability.
Had he ever was he aware of the 3 phases of healing?
Not at all.
And where would you say his attention was right now as you're reviewing the 3 phases of healing?
He was kind of going off in the la la land by this time.
Okay.
I was trying to keep his focus.
Which remember we talked about that, because when chiropractors are talking, they are so consumed with what they do, and the example that I always give is, you don't care about how to write a brief just as much as they don't care about the 3 phases of healing. So he didn't know about the 3 phases of healing and its relationship to a permanent injury, which affects his income. Is that what you're telling me?
Right, and that's really what I tried to explain to him too. That the way we document, the way we do care, it allows us to pinpoint someone who's got a permanent injury and a permanent impairment, permanent disability. And that's what that's what you build your case on.
Okay. And what kind of
Um,
response did you get?
yeah, that kind of brought him back a little bit.
Okay, so it sounds like when
Brought him
you
back.
started talking about money, he kind of got back into the game again.
Yeah, ultimately when I did, yeah.
Okay.
So after I was talking about three phases, then I was like, okay, our next solution to help you in your claim settlements is we work with the medical team to ensure proper care and testing to document the extent of the injuries, impairments, and disabilities.
How
And
was
then I went.
how was his response to you use a medical team?
That's pretty much standard in Michigan. Well, maybe not. No, it's not standard actually. He understood that. He understood the importance of that. And I did say, yeah, we work with physical therapists, primary care physicians, podiatrists, pain management doctors, orthos, neurosurgeons. So we have a whole great team to properly ensure the proper care, testing, documentation of the injuries and impairments.
Okay. And then what happens next?
Then I described the CRMA, which is I kind of made it like something that was in our back pocket that no one else does. So I explained how the CRMA documents the alteration of motion segment integrity, can give an impairment rating, and he actually said that I haven't really heard that much about those impairment ratings. He did know a little bit about that, but I said, you don't have to worry about that. That's the adjuster entering that into the computer program, but it can give up to a 25% impairment rating, which can boost the value of your case.
What kind of response did he give?
He liked it. He liked it.
Okay.
And the last solution was, lastly, we do a knockout job and depositions, and if we need to go to court and testify, we can do that too. And you've seen what I can do in a deposition. So.
Okay, and then where does it go?
So then I tried to bring him back because he was fading again by that time. So then I said, what's in it for you?
Okay.
I started breaking down the numbers. I got out my calculator. So I said, all right, when the computer program is calculating the case value, it's typically 2 or 3 times the medical expenses.
Okay, before you go there, Chris.
Would you agree with that?
Now, Chris.
Would you agree with that?
Okay.
And he did.
So you said that. Did you go through each phase of treatment and do a comparative analysis of your financials?
I didn't break it down that much. I went through the phases of healing. I didn't do financial because I just wasn't ready for that yet. But I do have a breakdown of the team financial.
Okay.
So
okay.
I broke down the team. I didn't break down my financial per phase of healing. I did go through the phase of healing and make sure he understood that.
No, I'm talking specifically. I'm talking specifically about aligning money and therapeutics with each phase of healing. Did you do that?
I didn't do that. I will do it the next time. I just wasn't comfortable with that yet.
What did you do?
I did. Well, what I did was, so I said, so the Colossus calculates the claim by 2 or 3 times medical expenses. So then I went over our team's expenses. I said, our case value is usually about $10,000 per chiropractor. The physical therapist, usually about $10,000. MRI is about $5,000. So then I was asking him, is that what you normally see? Would you agree with that? Is that the right number, 5,000? So I was trying to get his input on there.
So you took a leap. You took a leap of giving them a bulk figure for each category of provider or diagnostic services, right?
Yes. and I knew what my case value was. I know what the physical therapy case value was, and I said it could be plus or minus also, but on average. Now MRI, all depends on the case. So I was trying to get his input in there. So then the next one was.
Well, let me ask you, because that kind of helps to solidify in the recipient's mind exactly how we're switching over from clinical to finance. Remember, it goes from clinical administrative to financial, and that's a major tipping point in the person's mind to get them to connect the clinical component to the administrative financial component. So you weren't concerned about taking that big leap and not covering it and kind of losing them a little bit?
Well, I don't know. I just wanted to get to the money. I wanted to show them the money.
Okay, so it wasn't a concern.
I felt like I was already kind of losing them a little bit with all of the phases of healing stuff. So I just wanted to get right to the money and show him how much pain he's in.
Okay.
So so Chiro, PT, MRI, EMG, NCB. I said, would you agree would be about around $5,000? What do you normally see in your cases? He agreed. Then I went, okay, medical specialist. I know this can vary, but I find that it's anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000. And I know if there's surgery, it could even be more than that. But on average, would you agree that $10,000 to $50,000? And he agreed. So I added up the total medical expense to be. So the total medical expense with the majority of my cases is typically about $40,000 to $50,000.
And that includes not chiropractic, but all medical expenses.
All medical expenses: Chiro, PT, MRI, EMG, NCV, medical specialist.
Right.
So now.
So you bulked it. So you didn't detail it, you bulked it, but you got his agreement. When you bulked these numbers, you got his agreement on these numbers.
Right, and I went and got his agreement on each one. I mean, Chiro I knew, PT I knew, MRI I made sure that I got his agreement, and so EMG, medical specialist.
Okay, so you got his agreement anyway. So you didn't lose them. You got his agreement with the numbers. So you got your numbers, and then what happened?
So then I got, all right, so now I got my total for medical expenses anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000. And then I went back and I said, okay, remember what I said about the computer program, Colossus? It's going to calculate your case value 2 to 3 times medical expense, depending on how well your doctors document the case. So so then I said, I'm going to go to the low number. I'm going to go $40,000 times 2. So that gives me $80,000.
Okay.
Your case value, your case average, you said was 40,000. So that is actually he might have said 50,000, but so that's a $40,000 difference.
Right.
And then I multiplied that times 2 patients, so then I said that's $80,000 difference in a month. Wow, that's a big deal.
And his response?
He was just dumbfounded.
Was he with you?
He was with me. The gears were starting to spin. So then I said. Chris, let me be clear. When you came to the money to show him what he personally was losing, what are you telling me happened? Then he started really focusing.
Okay, because now, up to this point, we covered clinical and administrative. We're switching over to financial, but up to this point, we have not touched any motivating button at all. That is the start of the motivation, and that's exactly what the response was you got. His lights start to come on because that's the motivation, is the loss of money. So he's starting to see the money.
The number was actually ended up being 10,000 when I was writing stuff down and I was doing my calculator.
Right.
It was actually $10,000 for the one patient. So I said, times two patients, that's $20,000 every month you're losing. And then I went, so 20,000.
What did he say when you said that, or did you just keep moving on?
He said, wow.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, 20,000 times 12, so you're losing about $240,000 a year. And by not working with doctors like me who do this type of documentation. So then I said,
and his response?
He just didn't even say anything at that point.
Chris? Did you feel like you had him and he was with you? And
oh, I had him for sure.
So at this point, you feel like you had him, but he didn't know which way to turn.
Exactly. He was like caught in a deer. He was like a deer caught in a headlight.
That's exactly how it works. When you start ratcheting up the pain, that's exactly what happens. Okay, next thing. So you show him how much he's losing in 1 year. Now he's starting to get quiet, right?
Yeah, and then I said, $240,000 a year. Wow, that's a bunch. Then I said, how many years have you been practicing? He said, 28 years. I'm like, wow, you lost almost $7 million in 28 years. And then I said, well, how many more years are you going to be practicing, do you think? And then he said, well, until I can't anymore. So I said, how about another 10 or 15 years? So then I times 15.
Well, did you calculate the amount of money going back that he lost?
Yeah, it was like $7 million.
When you showed him that, what did he say?
He didn't say anything.
What was your feeling? How was it? Did you feel like he was with you and you had him, or what?
I think he was confused. I had him, but he was like, whoa. He was set back.
Okay.
He didn't know. I don't think he knew what to think at that time. So then I said, well, if that's $240,000 a month, excuse me, $240,000 a year. If you're going to work for another 15 years, how do you feel about leaving $3.6 million on the table? What would you do with all that money?
What did he say?
And then I said, I know a lot of lawyers who they would probably pay off their house or go on a lot of more vacations or load up their retirement. How do you feel about that? So then,
what, Chris?
Yeah.
What did he say?
He didn't say anything.
He didn't give you any response when you're doing this?
Well, he did. He was like, oh wow, yeah, okay.
Do you feel like he was paying attention?
Yes, because then he was like, so then he was like, well, what's in it for me? Question mark. I'm like, we're going to help increase your case value of all of your patients by $10,000, which means $3.6 million over the next 15 years. And then he said, so you want me to send you, he said, you want me to send you clients? I'm like, yeah, we're gonna make your cases home runs because of what we do on a daily basis. And then he picked up his phone and he called one of his clients and gave the client my number on the spot right there.
Now, when you started adding up the money, because remember, we're taking them up, we're ratcheting up the motivation. That's what we're doing. So initially he catches on, pays attention, and you start going into these larger numbers. It sounds like it was almost starting to get a little too much for him to believe.
Yeah, those are big numbers. It is almost unbelievable, but it's crazy.
But he was with you. When you walked him through, he was with you.
Yeah, he was with me. He was in shock. I think he was like in so much shock, like he almost couldn't comprehend it. But then I know he did at the last minute because it's like he gave me a client right there.
Can you understand how that could be one hell of a shock to an attorney who's never heard this or seen anybody put it together?
I do now.
That's exactly what happens. It's almost uncomprehendable to practice for 10 or 20 years and to think that you lost 2 or 3 or $5 million and didn't even know it. It's almost, unless.
This guy lost $7 million, but I'm like, well, I've only been practicing for 10 years, so let's just go 10 years forward from now and see how much more money you can make by working with us.
Yeah, and my only point being is, look how quickly you can lose them by not stair-stepping them and getting their agreement through each of these these are very sensitive steps. This is where you're at the core. You're at the absolute core of the motivation. And you cannot do a high paradigm shift here at all. You've got to do one step, back off, and get his agreement. Because it's too easy to move to get to too big of a number
Right.
and now when that happens, they just back off and get defensive. So that is the importance of detailing the steps and then stopping at each step and reversing and getting an agreement before you go to the next step. That's a very vital, how it's delivered can be just as important or more important as the content you're delivering. So the good news is it sounds like he was with you and he didn't get defensive, but it was just a pretty big number. And it sounded like you just it almost sounds like a punch and you dazed him. You didn't knock him out, but it was like he was dazed.
I knocked the wind out of him.
Right.
That's almost what it was like.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you didn't knock him out, but you hit him and you dazed him and he didn't know how to come back.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you stair-stepped him so well that he couldn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
I mean, the numbers don't lie.
Well, I mean, you put the pieces together just like what we show.
Yeah.
So there's where can he go? Because you cleanly just put them all together.
Yeah, exactly. I put them all together and then hit him with a big right hook with those numbers.
Yeah, because you put it all together like that, he couldn't do a defensive reaction as easily and go into a defensive maneuver and denial because you cleanly set the stage. That is so important to understand in a sales presentation. And that's why I got a little worried when you said you jumped and you didn't increment the cost per phase of care. That's why I got a little, I'm like, because when you don't have these little segments in place and you start getting to the motivation, that is the common point right there, Chris, where they go into defensive and denial. But if you set the stage incrementally all the way through and you got their agreement, what happens is kind of what happened with you. That they're dazed. It's like, I never heard this before, but I don't know anywhere to go because everything he said is right.
Yeah. And plus you didn't even know half the stuff I was talking about. Or a portion of it, about collapses and about
yeah, so your knowledge base also had them. But really what I'm referring to is the psychology of sales, the subconscious reactions to sales. And that's why that presentation was put together like it was. It stops and prevents defensive reactions, but you got to be really aware of some of these major points. So his defensive reaction essentially was when he said to you, so you want me to send you more clients. That was his defensive reaction.
Yeah.
That was his way out.
Yeah.
Chris, that was his solution to alleviating his pain.
Right.
And guess what the presentation is totally geared to do?
To relieve that pain.
To create the pain and then you be the solution to the pain, which is exactly why he said, so you want me to send my clients to you because you now became the solution to him getting a left hook and now he's dazed. See, that's the psychology of what happened. So he comes back and he offers up his pain relief solution, which is, so you want me to refer you clients. Well, that's his way of stopping the pain. Well, guess what? That's what the whole presentation was meant to do. So
That's what it did.
yeah. So he says that. How did you feel when he said that? How did you feel when he said, so you want me to refer all your patients and you come back and say what you said?
I'm like, yeah, that's what you do, and what we do is we make sure we document all the entries, all the impairments and disabilities, and you're automatically going to start seeing your case values go up.
So you confirm, and then what's he do next?
Then he's like, I got someone I know. Oh well, actually, all right. So then I said, so I was like, so how do you feel about potentially leaving $3.6 million on the table for the rest of your career? Are you okay with that? And I did mention when I said the 3.6 million, I was like, wow, what are you going to do with all that money? So then I actually said, which one of your clients do you think that might have a case that may not?
Well, Chris, before you go to that,
yeah.
What did he say when you said about the money that he is leaving on the table?
I don't remember exactly, but
okay.
I think he said something like, "Well, I could do." He said, "I can think of a couple of things I can do with them."
Okay, and when you menued him, when you said, in my experience, if attorneys made this money, they could pay off their house or the retirement. You didn't hit on the topics I gave you, but you said we could pay off your house, take a few more vacations, and pay some more into your retirement. Did he comment on that?
I don't remember. I think it was more like, I can think of a couple things I could do with that money.
Okay, because remember, and my only point is you have to take that extra step after you show money, because most of the time loss of money will be enough, but you want to personalize it because money is third-party abstract. So now we have to interpret, what does the loss of money mean to that person? That's why after we show the money, we say, in my experience, when an attorney could make that kind of money, they'd pay off their house, pay off their credit cards, and typically take a few more nice vacations, because that is what most people do say they would do if they ran into a chunk of money. So the point being is, we converted a third-party abstract concept, money. Most people will catch it, I will tell you, but we converted it to something that was meaningful and valuable and personal in his life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Just like if he had to pay for his college, if let's say they had college kids in college, or they were paying tuition, or let's say he was in a divorce and he had to pay regular alimony payments. These are motivating factors on why he would want the money. Now it's very personal reasons, okay? And they're pain-based. They're pain-based. That's why when you said retirement account, that is not a pain-based. You thought of that on your own. That is not something I gave you. That's a pleasure-based statement.
Right.
That is not a pain-based statement, okay? Paying off a house, paying off your credit cards, paying your alimony, your kids' tuition, all of those are pain-based personal motivators.
Well, what if you don't have enough money in your retirement and you gotta get going on saving it up?
I just spoke in generalities. Every situation. Yeah. Well, if I'm in my late 50s or 60s and I don't have any money in my retirement, then it becomes more of a factor. Not if I'm under 45 years old. No.
Yeah.
It's too far out. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just wanted to make sure and my only point is, is we personalize the loss of money to them. That's how we make it more real. Okay? So then what happens? You say yes, and he says what?
And then he said, so yeah, I was like, can you think of any of your clients that may not have their cases documented properly, or who I could do an evaluation on to determine the financial drivers of their case.
Okay, so excellent. You nailed the need, and then you're proactive, connecting what you just did to his present status to get business now. You didn't wait. In other words, you didn't wait for it to happen. You stimulated the activity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so that's the only part I want to point out with that. So you say who essentially matches what I just covered that you're possibly going to be losing out on, and what does he do?
Then he says, "Oh, I got a new guy that I can send you right now." And then he called the guy on the cell phone and gave him my number.
What did you think when that happened, Chris? How were you feeling when that happened?
Pretty good.
Did you think maybe you ran into something?
Oh yeah.
Did you think maybe that you kind of are in control of your destiny now?
That was like the first time I really ever did the stupid thing, and it worked like a charm. I mean, just wait.
I don't know if I would call it stupid.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. So here's your first presentation to, an attorney you met essentially one time and worked with, and you take them through, all the buttons flip, and on the spot you get a new client. You got to be feeling pretty good about yourself right about now.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Okay. And
yeah, for sure.
And then what happens after that?
Then we part ways.
Now the obvious question is, if you can do this with this guy on your first time out of the chute, that was the first time giving this presentation to an attorney, and you get those kind of results, how are you feeling about your future and the potential business that's out there with personal injury?
Feel pretty good about that, because there's a ton of lawyers around here doing PI.
And then how are you feeling about what the attorneys know versus what you were able to show them?
They don't know anything.
Right.
I can't believe it.
Right.
I was almost in shock, thinking that he didn't even know. I know he was a little older. He's got 9 kids, 15 grandkids, but so what? If you've been around that long, you should know this stuff.
Even by accident, by osmosis.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
So if you've been flying by the seat of his pants for 28 years, it's like, wow, we're going to really make a big difference in his career.
Yeah. And in summary, remember we talked about the majority of attorneys out there who don't use chiropractic services, who don't even know about these factors, and then all of these patients who are not getting chiropractic. Remember, there's only 32% of patients and personal injury patients that get CAM care. So 68% of the patients don't even get chiropractic care. So where does he fall into this ratio? Well, you have this attorney. He's obviously used you with this client, but he did not refer this client to you prior to you talking to him. So where's that client on the S-curve? They're on the right side of that S-curve. He has not referred them and wasn't going to refer them to the chiropractor, or he would have. So that shows the potential market. And then with him, you're able to take him through the sales presentation and establish more need. So that's being proactive. And so you use some of these factors, maybe not as great as they could have been, but you used a little publicity. You had a little bit of a foot in the door. You used a little bit of advertising to stimulate their interest. and then you gave them the sales presentation. So we already had some trust and confidence built into it, lower defenses and resistance. Then you take them through the sales presentation where we establish, we admits he's losing. We talk about a primary problem. At no time did we talk about how chiropractic can help the patient, which is a total pleasure-based system. At no time was that part of the discussion or the focus of this discussion. It was pain-based with the attorney, his primary need, loss of money. And that's what flips the switches. You connected it, you stair-stepped it, and when you end, he sends you a client, and that's how it works. And all you got to do now is process that client using all those financial drivers and documentation. And now you do have to follow up with him. You can't let him go, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we have to continually to support and remind him of all these factors that he's potentially losing and what you're doing to support and stop him from losing a lot of money. That's where the communication continues on with that person. And there's a whole system because we want all his business now, right?
That's all of it.
We don't want just one. We want every client he has, we want.
I said you should. I said you should send us all your patients, all your clients, because we're going to help increase the value of all of them. I actually said that to them.